In today's video, I want to make a little bit of an updated version of all my gear. So I will cover all my super duper practical photography and vlogging gear. So I want to start out by covering my vlogging gear first, because it's a very easy setup and fast to cover. So I want to start out with the audio, and the most important aspect of any video production is the audio. You can have the best video gear, but if the audio is terrible, the video will be unwatchable. However, you can on the other side have a terrible camera, but if you have good audio, the video will be watchable. I am using the Røde Lavalier, and I have a little wind buff here on top. It just comes with this one here, or you have to buy it separately depending on the package you get. And as you have seen many times when I vlog in high winds, and it does a fantastic job for the most part. If the wind comes straight face forward, it can be a little bit problematic, but generally it does a good job. The lavalier leads all the way down to my external recorder. I record externally from the camera, so I will have to synchronize my audio files with my video files when I do my video editing. This is the H1 recorder from Zoom. It's a great recorder. It has served me for many years. I do not plan to change it anytime soon. The good thing about being used to your gear is that you know the ins and outs of it and where you can have some problems with it. The one thing to be aware of is that you may need to have a little converter cable between the H1 Zoom recorder and your lavalier. But you can read much more about that on any homepage that sells this kind of setup. There are newer versions of how you can record audio directly into your camera. I don't use it. I have seen too many mistakes being done with that. This one works for me, and especially working with a lavalier, I can go back and forward as much as I want without it being a problem for the audio quality. When it comes to the vlogging camera, I use my little DJI Osmo Pocket, and I've done so for the past 2.5 years. It works perfectly, 4K and great video quality. It's also the one I use to create a lot of handheld B-roll with, because it's stabilized. As you can see here, back and forward, up and down. It simply just gets the job done. It's easy to start, one click, and then I'm recording myself. So you can see like this, and this is how you always see me. I can walk with it, no problem. It is completely stabilized. Perfect little vlogging setup, and the best part is it takes up no space whatsoever. This is what my vlogging setup takes of space. Works perfectly. So besides the audio I record via the lavalier into my Zoom H1, I also have a microphone for my regular photography camera, my Sony a7R III. More about that later. And it's a great video mic. It's a so-called shotgun mic. It's called the Video Mic Pro, and I'm pretty sure it's the second version. However, they don't sell the first version yet, so this is just called the Video Mic Pro. It has a dead cat on too, just to make sure that I don't get so much wind noise either. Works great. I will use it for all the B-roll I record of myself walking. So yeah, not a biggie, but I do think that it's still important to have proper audio on the B-roll whenever I get walking, else it can become a little bit not so much bass. The audio recorded through cameras usually just sound terrible. So due to me having had some back issues for the past year, it's not super duper bad, but it's enough for me to be a little bit worried. I am only 35 and I don't want to have huge back problems for the rest of my life. So I have put this setup together really just to lighten up my backpack, and it just works wonders. So that is why I really call it just a super duper practical landscape photography camera setup. So my tripod of choice is one of the Travel Angels from Benro. As you can see, I have the center column extended right now, and it's simply just to make it taller, because admittedly it is not very tall, but it works wonders for me. Me being 182 centimeters, it gets the job done, and I don't have to carry around a big heavy tripod. Sturdy wise, it also works great even in very, very windy conditions. As you have seen in many of my previous videos, this tripod here is actually the one I end up using, simply just because it's so practical. It's a travel tripod. The only main benefit of actually having one of those big tripods is that they are taller. They are, in my experience, not particularly more sturdy. You will still need to have a fast shutter speed if you shoot in windy weather, maybe up the ISO, maybe even touch the camera. You can't do long exposures anyways, because the wind will unavoidably hit your camera, and that will make micro shakes even if you have a huge tripod. So a small travel tripod gets the job done in the vast majority of circumstances. This tripod here actually comes with a small center column. I've never used it. If I need to extend my center column, I do, and I have no problem getting sharp photos. If you aren't out about how to get sharp photos, be sure to check out my video about getting sharp photos. I'll link it up in the corner. I share all the tips that I know to get sharp photos. I also have a drone which I'm using in different circumstances whenever I'm actually allowed to fly it. I use the DJI Mavic 2 Pro. Fantastic drone, still the best for photography due to its 1-inch sensor. However, by now you may want to consider getting some of the newer drones due to new EU regulations in the drone field. So when it comes to the lenses, you already know by now that I'm using the Tamron 28-200, so at 28mm and then at 200 here. And you can see how much that is on this B-roll, zooming in and out. And that is just like a fantastic lens. Remember to see my entire review of this lens, so you know whether it will work for you or not. But it works really, really well for me. I've just been standing here at literally the roadside here. I've been photographing out over this field towards these trees, and you can of course see I have these heavy clouds here in the background. And I have simply been waiting for the light. You can see there's just a little bit of light here on these background trees here. So when the light comes in and light up the foreground and the trees, they really stand out to this dark, dark background. And then waiting for some seagulls to fly around over here. And I think I got a really great shot with this lens. It's sharp as you could wish for a super zoom lens. And the main thing is about this lens, it gets the job done. And you can't say that for a whole lot of super zoom lenses. This lens covers everything from, the wide angle ish and then to a short telephoto. And that is why this by now is more or less my most used lens. And it just works really well on a day where you just drive around like I do here. So remember to watch my entire video about the Tamron 28-200mm if you think you want to get this one, because there are a little bit of drawbacks to it that I can't cover in this video. So the next lens on the list is my 16-35mm, and it just goes brilliantly hand in hand with the 28-200, because the 28-200, it's a little bit soft and the corners are not very good in the wide end. So due to the overlap between the 16-35 and the 28-200, I can just use this one all the way up to 35mm, and I have a really good potential for sharp photos all the way from 16mm to 200mm with only 2 lenses. On top of that, this lens goes down to 2.8 f2.8, so it's also pretty good for astrophotography during night. But it being a wide angle lens, and you as a landscape photographer obviously have to have a wide angle lens, and it's because it's just so good at making that foreground really big, and then you can incorporate whatever you want in the background, and it like takes in a big wide vista. However, in this example here, I am simply just using it where I want to photograph the very moody sky up here. Then I use it down here to get a shot somewhat like this here, where I include those background moody clouds. And due to it being a wide angle lens, I can get most of the scene in focus. The very immediate foreground will be out of focus, even at shooting at like f16, but it's pretty good because the lens is really good quality, so the bokeh is rather soft. So yeah, great lens, 16-35mm f2 GM from Sony. Some of you may ask what I'm going to do with all my old gear or my more advanced gear, the 12-24, the 24-105 and the 100-400mm, all from Sony. I am most likely going to bring them when I'm going out traveling, but I'm probably going to differentiate between what gear I will actually bring out into the field or up on top of the mountain, dependent on what I expect to use. So if you want to learn more about composition in landscape photography, be sure to get my 2 ebooks. You can even get a couple of free light versions of those ebooks just by following the links down in the description. They cover everything that you need to know for composing your photo. So subject, foreground, background, midground, leading lines, how to utilize geometry in your photos, how to use flow in a dynamic scene. Yeah, so all the good stuff. And they have gotten 5-star reviews, so people are generally just really happy about them. And thank you so much, guys, for the 5-star reviews. It really means a lot. So there are links to them down in the description, so be sure to get them. So these days I've actually gone back and started to use one of my older and smaller camera backpacks. And obviously when the gear I'm using doesn't take up a lot of space, there's no reason to walk around with a huge backpack on your back. So I'm actually using this one here, which is the Lovepro Pro Tactic 450W, as far as I remember is the name. There is also a smaller model, which is the 350 model. And as you can see, you can basically design it exactly as you want. There are pockets for whatever you will need, even for your laptop. It has this active zone, which works fine, I guess. And it comes with this hard cover. There are newer versions by now, but generally the point is that you can clip all these hangers on and off, and there are plenty of them. You even get like pouches for some water, extra pouches here from the side, and of course so you can put your tripod in here. They open in the side, which works really well if you want to grab your camera like that. Honestly, I have never really used it. On the front, there are the classics where you can strap it over your chest and also down by the stomach. The belt down here has extra pouches too. So generally a great backpack, and obviously I haven't gotten rid of it because when I needed to get something and use something smaller, I would always have something. So yeah, great, fairly light backpack. And I forgot to mention that the backpack also comes with a rain cover that you can easily wrap around it. The rain cover isn't the best rain cover in the entire world, but it is attached to the backpack. So if you are in windy conditions and the wind grabs the rain cover, then it won't fly away from you. So I actually think that is a great feature. So when it comes to the camera in and of itself, I'm using the Sony a7R III, my trusty Sony a7R III. Now I'm not going to go into any details with this camera in this video because I have already made an entire video about this camera, and I will just link to it up in the corner. Everything I say in that video is still exactly the same of my thoughts here, the downsides and the upsides to this camera. And I gotta admit, unless someone is donating me a Sony A1, there's not really any other camera on the market right now that I would consider upgrading to. So yeah, I'll keep this for now, and hopefully the Sony a7R5 will come out here in 2021 or 2022, and will have the upgrades that I really miss. So the main reason why I came down to the water was, of course, to show what filter I'm using, because filters create long exposures and you need water to really utilize those. Now I'm using the filter from H&Y, and I talked a little bit about it in one of my videos from the autumn, and it's an okay variable ND filter with a built-in polarizer. As practical it is to have a variable ND filter with a built-in polarizer, there are just some issues with this one here. And it's mainly issues that you will experience if you're using a wide-angle lens, and you usually do that as you are a landscape photographer. So at my 16 to 35 millimeter lens, I get some rather big vignettes. You can actually see the filter when I'm zoomed all the way out to 16 millimeter. I need to zoom into 18 millimeter to actually get rid of them. And it is of course emphasized even more on the 2:3 aspect ratio when I shoot photos. Now this is of course not an issue whatsoever if you're zoomed further in or use a lens that is zoomed further in. It is only on the widest focal lengths on the wide angle lenses. Now the bigger issue with this filter is that due to it being a variable ND filter, is that it actually has some cross vignetting going on when you max out the intensity of the neutral density effect. So when you turn it all the way to what I think is 6 stops, then you get the cross vignetting. So you will have to dial it back to like 4.5, 5 stops. This can be an issue because there is actually a big difference between a 5-stop and a 6-stop when it comes to the seconds when we're doing long exposures. Like an entire stop is the difference between like a 10-second exposure and a 20-second exposure, or a 15-second exposure and a 30-second exposure. So there are drawbacks to this filter. If you are using a wide-angle lens as your main lens, then I would probably not really recommend this filter. Sorry to say. In my experience, a good old circular filter, whatever you need, that you can screw on, that fits the filter thread that your lens is using, is actually the one delivering the best results. Yes, it's the least practical, but they get the job done. Now, to be fair to this filter, it actually also comes with step-up rings. So in that way, you kind of will only need this one filter given that you can live with the cross vignetting and the vignettes along the edges of your wide angle lenses. I've been using it to great effect on my 24 to 105mm and on my 28 to 200mm. So if you're just using those lenses, it's a fine filter. I can recommend it. But if you're using the wide angles, I would probably find another solution. If you want to learn how I've edited the photos I've shown in this video, or just how I edit my photos in general, be sure to sign up, enroll in my huge Photoshop for landscape photographers post-processing course. I have divided it into a few different chapters, so there's a few intro videos that make sure that you get used to the program, so you can easily go from Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom into Photoshop. There's a lot of people who have a hurdle with that, and I wanted to break down that barrier in a nice and easy way. Then I have an entire section with all the different tools that I utilize in my editing, that you can of course pick and choose whatever you want to use in your editing. And then I have a great section with 11, I think by now, start to finish videos where I just go through some of my most popular photos and show exactly how I have edited them step by step. And then I have a final section where I go through some of the mistakes that you can encounter in editing, and I will go through some very fast edits where I basically just show all the layers I use in Photoshop. So it's a great course. A lot of people are really happy about it, those who have enrolled, and I even give a 30 days money back guarantee. If you are not sure whether it is for you or not, then you can get your money back, no questions asked. I hope you enjoyed this video. There was a little bit of photography and a lot of gear talk in this one, so I would highly appreciate both a like and a comment as always. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more landscape photography, vlogs, videos, and yeah, generally landscape photography education. So yeah, subscribe, like, comment, share. See you in the next one.